Did Brooklyn Beckham just hit his breaking point? Because what just went down behind those billionaire mansion doors doesn't look like a simple family disagreement anymore, it looks like a power shift. A calculated one. For years, Brooklyn lived under one of the most iconic surnames in the world. The Beckham legacy, the red carpets, the brand, the empire. But now, insiders are whispering that the real power move didn't come from his famous parents. It came from Nicola's father. And when that move landed, something in Brooklyn snapped. Was it pressure? Pride? Or the silent weight of marrying into a world where money talks louder than love? Because suddenly, the golden boy doesn't look so golden. He looks cornered, emotional, on edge. And here's the twist no one saw coming. The same man who built a billion-dollar empire may have just reshaped Brooklyn's entire future without saying a single word publicly. So what exactly happened? Was this protection or a strategic takeover? And why are people saying Brooklyn didn't just react? He broke down. Stay with me. Because this story? It's about to get messy. The moment people started connecting the dots, everything changed. Because this wasn't just about a son choosing his wife over his parents anymore. It felt bigger. Strategic. Almost corporate. When you zoom out, the pattern starts to look less emotional and more calculated. Brooklyn Beckham didn't just drift away from the Beckham world. He relocated his center of gravity. Slowly, quietly, completely. From London to Palm Beach circles. From football royalty to boardroom royalty. From legacy fame to billionaire influence. And insiders, the kind who don't want to be named but somehow always know everything, say the shift wasn't random. It started subtly. Fewer family appearances. Shorter replies. Filtered conversations. More time spent inside the Peltz orbit. And here's where it gets interesting. Because those who've observed billionaire culture know something most fans don't. Power in those circles isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It doesn't tweet. It doesn't clap back on Instagram. It moves silently. And when a billionaire patriarch decides something about you, it's rarely emotional. It's strategic. So what exactly was the power move everyone keeps whispering about? Some say it wasn't a fight. Some say it wasn't a confrontation. Some say it wasn't even spoken out loud. It was structural. The prenup, airtight. The financial boundaries, crystal clear. The expectations, unspoken but understood. If this marriage ever cracks, Brooklyn walks away with what he built with Nicola. Nothing more. No safety net from the Peltz empire. No slice of generational billions. To some, that's normal protection. Standard billionaire protocol. To others, that's a reminder of who holds the leverage. And leverage changes behavior. Because imagine being Brooklyn for a second. You've already distanced yourself from one of the most recognizable families on the planet. Your relationship with your parents is tense. Communication is formal. Public narratives are swirling. Now ask yourself, if everything you've anchored your new life to is tied into one household, one orbit, one power center, what happens if that stability shakes? That's the psychological pressure people aren't talking about. Publicly, Brooklyn posts love, loyalty, devotion, strength. But privately, according to whispers floating through elite social circles, the pressure has been mounting. Not from shouting, not from arguments, but from expectations. Because in the Peltz world, value matters, direction matters, focus matters. And Brooklyn's career path, photography 1 year, cooking the next, branding experiments after that, hasn't exactly followed a straight line. To fans, that's exploration. To corporate-minded billionaires, that's instability. And when reports started circulating that Nelson wasn't fully impressed, something shifted in the narrative. Not publicly, but internally. The energy changed. Appearances became more curated. Projects more deliberate. Statements more defensive. Then came the emotional post. The one that stunned even people close to the situation. It wasn't just defensive. It felt final. Like a line drawn in permanent ink. He wasn't just responding to rumors. He was declaring independence. But independence from who? From his parents? Or from the perception that he's being guided? Because here's where it gets uncomfortable. The louder Brooklyn insists he's in control, the more people question whether that control is his. And that's not an accusation. It's an observation. Because power dynamics don't require villains. They require imbalance. And when one family represents global celebrity legacy and the other represents multi-billion-dollar boardroom dominance, the collision isn't emotional. It's ideological. One built on image and endurance, the other built on leverage and results. Brooklyn stands between those worlds. And somewhere in the middle, something snapped. Not in a screaming way. In a pressure cooker way. Insiders say the breakdown wasn't theatrical. It was internal. A realization moment. That no matter which side he chooses, he loses something. Choose your parents. Risk tension at home. Choose your wife. Risk permanent distance from your roots. Try to balance both. Risk disappointing everyone. That kind of emotional tug-of-war doesn't explode overnight. It builds, and builds, and builds. Until one day, you post something that feels less like a statement, and more like a release valve. And that's exactly how that viral moment felt. Not strategic. Not calculated. Emotional. Raw. Almost impulsive. Which is ironic, because the entire situation around him feels anything but impulsive. Meanwhile, the Beckham brand continues forward like a polished machine. Public unity. Sibling closeness. Legacy intact. No messy interviews. No public retaliation. Just controlled silence. And silence, in powerful families, speaks louder than words. But over in the Peltz universe? Also silence. No direct statements. No dramatic defense. No public shade. Just stillness. Calculated, billionaire-level stillness. And that's what makes this entire saga so gripping. Because nobody is screaming. Nobody is confessing. Nobody is publicly fighting. And yet, everything feels like a chess match. Brooklyn in the center. Love on one side. Legacy on the other. Money in the background. And reputation hovering above it all. The real question isn't whether Brooklyn broke down. It's whether he realized the cost of choosing sides. Because once you burn a bridge that iconic, rebuilding it isn't just emotional. It's political. And right now, the world isn't watching a simple family feud. It's watching a power realignment. And if the whispers are even halfway accurate, this story is nowhere near finished. And just when people thought the emotional explosion was the peak, it wasn't. Because behind the scenes, something shifted that didn't make headlines, but insiders say it changed the entire temperature of the situation. The conversations stopped being emotional. They became strategic. When families fight, there are tears, raised voices, hurt feelings. But when powerful families clash, there are advisors, there are lawyers, there are quiet meetings. And suddenly, what used to be a personal disagreement starts to feel like a boardroom negotiation. That's when people close to the orbit began noticing something strange. Brooklyn's tone changed. Not just online. In person. He sounded rehearsed. Measured. Careful. Like every word had been weighed before it left his mouth. Now, does that mean someone is controlling him? No. But it does mean he understands the stakes. Because when billion-dollar reputations are involved, nothing is casual. And here's where the tension skyrockets. Rumors began circulating that certain public appearances were declined last minute. Invitations that once would have been automatic suddenly became scheduling conflicts. Family milestones? Missed. Industry events where both families might cross paths? Avoided. Coincidence? Maybe. Pattern? Definitely. Meanwhile, the whispers inside elite social circles grew louder. Brooklyn isn't just choosing sides. One anonymous source allegedly told a lifestyle insider. He's restructuring his entire life. Restructuring. That word hit differently. Because restructuring isn't emotional. It's strategic. And then came the luxury optics. Private jets. Palm Beach gatherings. High-level investment dinners. The kind of rooms where deals are made in whispers and handshakes matter more than headlines. Brooklyn wasn't just attending, he was present. Absorbing. Learning. Some say he's being mentored. Others say he's being molded. And that's where public opinion split down the middle. On social media, fans were ruthless. Is he building his own empire or living in someone else's? Why does he look more like a guest in his own life lately? Did he trade one powerful last name for another? Brutal, but effective. Because perception, especially in high society, shapes reality. And perception right now is messy. Then something even more uncomfortable surfaced. Not a scandal, not a crime, but a reputation shift. Industry insiders quietly questioned Brooklyn's independence. Not his talent, not his ambition, his autonomy. And autonomy is everything when your brand is built on individuality. The Beckham legacy was built on discipline, structure, Long-term consistency. David's career? Laser-focused. Victoria's reinvention? Calculated and relentless. Brooklyn's path? Experimental. Fluid. Creative. But in circles where stability equals credibility, fluidity can look like fragility. And fragility in a high-power marriage? Raises eyebrows. Now here's where it gets explosive. Because some observers believe the real power move wasn't financial at all. It was psychological. Think about it. When someone marries into a family with extraordinary wealth and influence, the dynamic subtly shifts. Even if no one says it out loud. Even if no one demands anything. Expectations exist. Standards exist. Pressure exists, and pressure doesn't need to be spoken to be felt. Insiders claim there were conversations about long-term vision, about focus, about direction, about what Brooklyn truly wants to be known for. Normal questions, right? Yes. Until they are coming from a billionaire who built his life on ruthless strategic precision. Suddenly, they don't feel casual. They feel evaluative. And when evaluation enters marriage dynamics, emotions spike. Because love feels safe. Assessment feels conditional. Now imagine navigating that while already emotionally distant from your parents. That's isolation pressure layered on performance pressure. And somewhere in that tension, Brooklyn reportedly hit a wall. Not publicly, privately. Frustration grew. Not at Nicola. Not necessarily at Nelson. But at the narrative. At the constant speculation that he isn't steering his own ship. That he's being influenced. Directed. Handled. That word kept surfacing in gossip threads. And nothing irritates someone trying to prove independence more than being labeled controlled. So what does someone do when they feel misunderstood? They double down. More public declarations of loyalty. More visible unity. More intentional appearances within the Pelt circle. Almost like a silent rebuttal to the world. But here's the twist nobody expected. The more he doubled down, the more critics amplified. Because critics don't disappear when you respond. They escalate. And the pressure cooker tightened. Meanwhile, the Beckham side? Still silent. No dramatic interviews. No messy counterposts. Just business as usual. Family photos. Brand launches. Smiling unity. Which, ironically, made Brooklyn look even more isolated. Not because he was attacked, but because he was absent. Absence in powerful families doesn't scream rebellion. It whispers exile. And exile, self-imposed or not, is heavy. Then came another subtle shift. Sources claim Brooklyn has been hyper-aware of public perception lately, monitoring commentary, paying attention to narratives. And that awareness can be exhausting. Because when every move becomes symbolic, nothing feels simple anymore. A dinner isn't a dinner. It's alignment. A trip isn't a trip. It's allegiance. A post isn't a post. It's a statement. And that's when insiders say the emotional crack widened. He didn't just snap at a person. He snapped at the situation. At the chessboard. At the feeling that every move he makes gets interpreted as proof of something. Proof he's controlled. Proof he's rebelling. Proof he's unstable. Proof he's dependent. Imagine carrying that weight daily. Now add the unspoken billionaire expectation cloud hovering above you. And the ghost of a legacy surname behind you. That's not a simple life. That's a pressure experiment. And if the whispers are even partially true, the breakdown wasn't weakness. It was overload. Overload from scrutiny. Overload from identity confusion. Overload from navigating two dominant power structures at once. And the scariest part? This isn't the kind of conflict that explodes and disappears. This is the kind that simmers. Quietly. Strategically. Until something forces a decisive move. And people close to the circle say one thing repeatedly. This isn't over. Because when power, pride, money, and legacy collide, there's always a second wave. And the second wave is usually bigger than the first. And just when the situation seemed locked in a cold, silent standoff, a new fear started creeping into conversations. Not anger. Not betrayal. Fear. Because here's what nobody says out loud in elite circles. Power doesn't like unpredictability. And unpredictability is exactly what this situation has become. Two empires. One sun. Zero clear resolution. The longer this silence stretches, the more irreversible it feels. And insiders, the same quiet observers who watch without speaking publicly, are starting to whisper something chilling. What happens if Brooklyn ever changes his mind? Not today. Not tomorrow. But one day. Because walking away feels powerful in the moment. But staying away? That's a lifelong commitment. Right now, Brooklyn stands firm. Loyal. Defiant. Certain. But certainty under pressure can sometimes be performance. And that's not an attack, it's human psychology. When you make a bold public stance, especially against your own family, the world expects you to stick to it. There's pride involved. Ego involved. Narrative involved. Going back suddenly doesn't feel simple. It feels like losing. And in a world built on reputation, nobody wants to look like they lost. That's where the real tension begins. Because reconciliation isn't just emotional. It's political. Imagine the optics. If Brooklyn reconnects with his parents publicly, critics will scream, "See? He was wrong." If he stays distant forever, others will whisper, "He burned a legacy for good that there's no clean path forward anymore." Every option carries damage. And that's what makes this so heavy. But here's the darker undercurrent bubbling beneath the surface. Isolation changes people. Not dramatically overnight. Gradually. When your world becomes smaller, tighter, centered around one orbit, your perception shifts. Again, that's not villainizing anyone. It's reality. Human beings absorb the environment they live in. And right now, Brooklyn's environment is very different from the one he grew up in. Less public chaos. More controlled rooms. More private influence. More strategic energy. And some observers say that shift has reshaped his entire emotional compass. Meanwhile, the Beckham machine keeps moving. Brand deals. Campaign launches. Public unity. From the outside, it looks seamless. But insiders insist there's one absence that can't be photoshopped. Brooklyn. And here's where things get emotionally complicated. Because despite all the speculation, those close to the Beckham side reportedly say one thing repeatedly: the door is open. No conditions. No contracts. Just open. But open doors only matter if someone wants to walk through them. And right now, Brooklyn appears planted exactly where he stands. Then there's Nicola. Calm. Steady. Unapologetic. To supporters, she's fiercely protective. To critics, she's strategically positioned. Either way, she's consistent. And consistency in chaos is powerful. But the most fascinating figure in this entire chessboard remains the quietest one. Nelson. No dramatic defenses. No emotional interviews. No public correction of narratives. Just silence. And in high-level power dynamics, silence isn't passive. It's calculated. Because silence lets speculation grow. Silence forces others to speak first. Silence preserves leverage. And leverage is everything in billionaire psychology. Some social insiders suggest that the greatest power move wasn't confrontation. It was simply staying still while everyone else reacted. Think about it. While the internet debates, while fans pick sides, while headlines swirl, the billionaire patriarch says nothing. That restraint alone shifts the balance. Because when you don't engage, you don't lose. And when you don't lose, you maintain position. But here's the uncomfortable layer no one wants to admit. What if Brooklyn is exactly where he wants to be? What if this isn't control? What if it's evolution? That possibility frustrates critics the most. Because it challenges the entire narrative of manipulation. Maybe he didn't collapse. Maybe he recalibrated. Maybe he looked at both empires and decided which future felt safer. Or stronger. Or simply quieter. But even if that's true, the emotional cost remains. Distance from family isn't just geographic. It's psychological. And psychology always circles back. Years from now, when headlines fade and social media calms, one thing will still exist: memory. Memories of Sunday dinners missed. Of milestones unshared. Of silence where laughter used to be. And that's the part money can't fix. Not Beckham money, not Pelt's money. No amount. Because legacy isn't just about brand. It's about belonging. And belonging gets complicated when pride enters the equation. Right now, this feels like a stalemate. Nobody winning. Nobody surrendering. Just strategic patience. But patience has a breaking point. And when it hits, it won't look like Instagram drama. It'll look like a decisive shift. A reconciliation. Or a permanent fracture. There's no middle ground left. And that's why this saga refuses to fade. Because it's not fueled by scandal. It's fueled by power. Not loud power. Structural power. The kind that reshapes futures quietly. Brooklyn once stood as the golden heir of a global celebrity dynasty. Now he stands as a man navigating two worlds that operate on entirely different rulebooks. One built on legacy, one built on leverage. And in between those worlds, identity. That's the real battle. Not parents versus in-laws. Not love versus loyalty. Identity versus expectation. And until that internal conflict resolves, the external drama won't either. So the question isn't whether he snapped. The question is whether that snap was the end of something, or the beginning of a transformation nobody fully understands yet. Because in high-power families, the loudest drama isn't the most dangerous. It's the quiet realignments that change everything. And if you think this story is over, look closer. It's just entering its most unpredictable phase. So now the question isn't just what happened. It's what happens next. Did Brooklyn Beckham really break down under pressure? Or did he make the boldest move of his life and simply refuse to look back? Is this a love story built on loyalty, or a power shift playing out behind mansion doors? Because when you strip away the headlines, the designer suits, the billion-dollar bank accounts, what's left? A son, a wife, two empires, and a decision that might echo for decades. Some people say he chose freedom. Others say he chose influence. And a few are whispering that he may have chosen isolation without even realizing it. But here's what makes this story so addictive. Nobody has blinked. Not the Beckhams. Not the Peltz camp. And definitely not Brooklyn. And when powerful families refuse to blink, history tells us one thing: the next move is always bigger. So tell me, if you were in his position, what would you choose? Legacy or loyalty? Stability or independence? Family name or fresh start? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this debate is far from over. And if you want more deep dives, power clashes, and the stories nobody dares to unpack, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because the next chapter, it might change everything. And trust me, you don't want to miss it.